She flirted with a stranger at the bar, then found out he was the new sheriff in town. And her new boss. A chance encounters. The last ember of sunset painted Pinewood sky in amber hues as Mia Reynolds adjusted her forest ranger hat and surveyed the annual harvest festival. Lanterns swayed gently between towering pines, casting a golden glow across the fairgrounds. After 5 years of protecting these forests, Mia knew every trail, creek, and clearing, but tonight, something felt different. "One night off duty won't kill you," said Olivia, Mia's roommate nudging her toward the makeshift dance floor. "You're still clutching your phone like the forest might spontaneously combust without you." Mia smiled reluctantly. "Force of habit. Between the drought and those developers circling our land like vultures, I'm just worried, I know," Olivia finished. "But tonight is for forgetting all that. Look around, everyone's celebrating. Even Director Hayes is letting loose." Mia glanced at her retiring boss, who was enthusiastically judging the pie contest. In 2 days, he'd be replaced by some outsider from the East Coast. Another bureaucrat who'd likely never slept under the stars or tracked a mountain lion at dawn. "I'm getting us drinks," Olivia declared, disappearing into the crowd. Mia wandered toward the edge of the clearing, where the music faded into the natural symphony of the forest. She'd nearly reached her favorite observation point when a low voice startled her. "Beautiful view." She turned to find a man leaning against a pine tree, tall, with wind-tousled dark hair and eyes the color of pine resin in sunlight. His faded flannel shirt and worn hiking boots might have helped him blend in, if not for his unmistakable air of someone not from Pinewood. "It is," Mia replied cautiously. "First time at our festival?" He nodded, stepping closer. "First time in Pinewood, actually. I'm Alex." "Mia." She noticed calloused hands, not the soft grip of a city dweller. "Just passing through?" Something flickered in his eyes. Something like that. "What brings you to the edge of the party? Not enjoying the festivities? Just taking a breather?" "I know every face in town. It gets a bit predictable." His smile revealed a slight dimple. "And here I thought small towns were supposed to be comforting in their familiarity." "They can be," Mia admitted. "But sometimes familiarity feels like a beautiful cage," he offered. Their eyes met, and Mia felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, as if he'd plucked the thought directly from her mind. The string lights reflecting in his eyes made them appear almost golden. "Let me guess," she said. "City boy looking for some authentic rural experience?" Alex laughed, a warm sound that seemed to melt into the forest around them. "Not exactly, though I admit I've spent more time in conference rooms than forests lately." "What brings you to our little corner of nowhere, then?" Before he could answer, the band struck up a lively folk tune and the crowd cheered. "Dance with me?" Alex asked suddenly, extending his hand. Mia hesitated. She didn't dance with strangers. She barely danced at all. Yet something about his outstretched hand felt like an invitation not just to dance, but to step outside the careful boundaries she'd drawn around herself. "One dance," she agreed. Taking his hand, one dance became 3, then 5. Alex moved with surprising grace for his height. As midnight approached, they found themselves back at the forest's edge, conversation flowing as easily as the creek that ran through Pinewood. "So the fearless forest ranger never leaves her beloved trees?" Alex teased after Mia confessed she hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. "The trees don't protect themselves," she replied. "And with the new conservation director arriving Monday, I need to make sure everything's perfect." "Sounds like you don't trust this new director." Mia sighed. "How could I? Some East Coast transplant who probably thinks conservation means recycling coffee cups. Meanwhile, we're fighting illegal logging and drought conditions." Alex studied her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "Maybe he'll surprise you." "I doubt it," Mia whispered, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. The scent of pine and something distinctly his own filled her senses. When he kissed her, it felt as natural as rainfall, his hands gentle at her waist, hers finding their way to his shoulders. The kiss deepened, and Mia felt something dormant within her awakening, like wildflowers after the first spring rain. Later, as dawn threatened the horizon, they reluctantly parted ways outside her cabin. No numbers exchanged, no promises made. just the lingering warmth of connection in a world that suddenly seemed full of possibility. Monday morning arrived with mist clinging to the pines. Mia strode into the ranger station, prepared to meet the new director with professional courtesy, despite her misgivings. Director Hayes beckoned her into the conference room. "Mia, meet Alexander Winters, our new conservation director." And there he stood, Alex from the festival, now in a pressed shirt with a department badge. Their eyes met across the room, his widening slightly in recognition. "Ranger Reynolds," he said evenly, extending his hand. "I've heard impressive things about your dedication to these forests." Mia's world tilted as she shook his hand, remembering how those same fingers had traced her jawline beneath the stars. "Director Winters," she managed. "Welcome to Pinewood." Professional boundaries. The meeting room fell silent as Mia struggled to maintain her composure. Director Winters, stood before her colleagues, outlining his vision for Pinewood's conservation efforts with the same quiet confidence that had drawn her in at the festival. Only now, that charm felt like a betrayal. "I'd like to implement new tracking protocols for our endangered pine marten population," he explained, his gaze deliberately avoiding hers. "Ranger Reynolds, I understand you've been mapping their territories?" "Yes, sir," Mia replied stiffly. 3 years of data. I can have my reports on your desk by tomorrow." "Today, if possible," he countered. "I'd like to review them before our meeting with the county developers." A murmur rippled through the room. The Ridgeline Development Project had been threatening the northwestern border of their protected land for months. As the meeting dispersed, Alex caught her elbow. "Ranger Reynolds, a word?" In his office, Director Hayes' office, just 2 days ago, Alex closed the door and sighed. The professional mask slipped momentarily. "Mia, It's Ranger Reynolds during work hours, Director Winters," she interrupted. "And I believe we both agree Friday night never happened." He studied her face. "Is that what you want?" "No," her heart answered traitorously. What she wanted was to understand how the man who had kissed her beneath pine boughs and starlight was the same person standing before her in a pressed uniform. "What I want is irrelevant," she said instead. "What matters is protecting this forest. You said you were passing through, not taking over my department." "I never lied to you, Mia. You made assumptions." "You let me make them," she countered. "You let me criticize the very position you were about to assume." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I appreciated your honesty. It's rare in my experience." Mia gathered her composure. "Well, here's more honesty. I don't trust outsiders to understand what Pinewood needs. These forests aren't just resources to be managed. They're alive. They're home." Something softened in his expression. "I know. That's why I'm here." Before she could respond, the emergency radio crackled to life. "Station, this is Torres. We've got smoke visible from Lookout Ridge. Possible wildfire starting in Sector 7. Mia grabbed the radio. "On my way, Torres." "Alert the team." Alex reached for his jacket. "I'm coming with you." "This isn't a field trip, Director," she said, already moving toward the door. His eyes hardened. "I spent 3 years in wildfire management in Colorado before taking my administration role. I'm qualified, Ranger." 4 hours later, Mia begrudgingly admitted, to herself, never aloud, that Alex wasn't just qualified. He was exceptional. While she coordinated the ground team, he worked seamlessly alongside them, digging fire breaks and predicting the fire's movement with uncanny accuracy. When shifting winds threatened to trap 2 junior rangers, it was Alex who navigated through the smoke to lead them to safety. By sunset, they had contained the fire to a 5-acre patch. As the team packed up equipment, Mia found Alex alone, his face smudged with soot, staring at a charred section of forest with an expression of such genuine grief that something inside her softened. "You really do care," she said quietly. He didn't look away from the burned trees. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might care in an abstract way, the way people from cities often do, as a concept, not a living thing." Alex finally turned to her, fatigue evident in the lines around his eyes. "My grandfather was a forest ranger in the Adirondacks. He taught me that we don't own the wild places. We're merely their guardians for a brief moment in time." In the fading light, with ash settling around them like gray snow, Mia saw him, truly saw him, for the first time. "The Pine Martens," she said suddenly. "They weren't in this section, were they?" He shook his head. "Their territories are 2 ridges east, but we should check the nesting sites tomorrow, make sure the smoke didn't disturb them." "We?" Mia raised an eyebrow. "If you'll allow it, Ranger Reynolds," he replied, formality returning to his tone, though his eyes remained warm. "I'd like to see your work firsthand." That night, alone in her cabin, Mia stared at the ceiling and tried to reconcile the 2 versions of Alex Winters that now occupied her thoughts. The mysterious stranger who had awakened something long dormant inside her, and the capable, dedicated director who had earned her reluctant respect. Neither was what she had expected. Both were dangerously compelling. For the next 2 weeks, they maintained careful professional boundaries. Alex impressed her team with his knowledge and willingness to get his hands dirty. He joined night patrols, helped repair weather stations, and spent hours studying Mia's meticulous records of the forest's ecosystems. The tension between them remained, electric and unspoken. When their hands accidentally brushed over maps, when their eyes met across the station's common room, when they found themselves alone on trails, each moment felt laden with unspoken possibilities. Then came the Ridgeline meeting. "Absolutely not," Mia said firmly, standing across from Marcus Jennings, the slick-haired developer whose company wanted to build luxury cabins along the forest's protected boundary. "Ranger Reynolds," Alex cautioned quietly. Jennings smiled condescendingly. "Director Winters, perhaps you could explain to your enthusiastic ranger that the economic benefits to Pinewood would never outweigh the ecological damage," Mia finished. "That ridge is a critical watershed. Development there would—" "Actually," Alex interrupted, "Mr. Jennings has a point about economic considerations." Mia stared at him in disbelief, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. So this was why they'd brought him in, to facilitate development, not conservation. "However," Alex continued smoothly, unfolding a map, "if Ridgeline is genuinely interested in sustainable development, I've identified an alternative location that would provide similar views while protecting the watershed and wildlife corridors." As he outlined a compromise that actually strengthened protection for the most sensitive areas, Mia watched him with growing amazement. Alex wasn't surrendering the forest. He was outmaneuvering Jennings at his own game. Later, walking back to the station under a canopy of rustling leaves, Mia finally asked the question that had been burning inside her. "Why Pinewood? With your background, you could be managing much larger preserves." Alex was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was low and private, meant only for her. "Some places call to you. I came to inspect Pinewood 6 months ago for a routine evaluation. I walked these forests for 3 days, and when I left, I couldn't forget them. Couldn't forget how alive they felt." He paused. "Some things just get under your skin and stay there." His eyes met hers, and Mia knew he wasn't only talking about the forest. Beneath the canopy, the storm arrived without warning. What had begun as a routine inspection of the eastern trails quickly transformed into a battle against nature's fury. Sheets of rain reduced visibility to mere feet, and thunder crashed overhead as Mia and Alex struggled along the increasingly treacherous path. "We need shelter," Alex shouted over the howling wind. "The lookout cabin should be half a mile ahead." Mia nodded, rain plastering her hair to her face. The old ranger cabin was their only option, a small outpost used during fire season but abandoned as autumn progressed toward winter. A blinding flash of lightning split the sky, followed immediately by an ear-splitting crack. Mia looked up in horror to see a massive pine tilting toward them. "Move!" Alex grabbed her arm, pulling her forward as the ancient tree crashed down behind them, blocking the trail they'd just traversed. Breathless and shaking, they finally reached the cabin. Alex forced the door open against the wind and they tumbled inside, dripping and exhausted. The cabin was simple. One room with a small wood stove, a table with 2 chairs, a narrow counter with basic supplies, and a single bed pushed against the far wall. Mia immediately went to work starting a fire while Alex secured the shutters against the raging storm. "Radio's dead," Mia announced, setting the useless device on the table. "And there's no cell service up here." "We're not going anywhere tonight," Alex said, peeling off his soaked jacket. "That storm's settling in. The team knows our route. They'll start searching once it passes." As warmth gradually filled the cabin, they shed their outer layers. Mia was painfully aware of Alex moving around the small space, his presence impossible to ignore in such close quarters. He'd rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms marked with a thin white scar that disappeared beneath the fabric. "There should be emergency supplies," she said, desperate for distraction. Food, water, first aid kit. They found enough to make a simple meal, which they ate in awkward silence, broken only by the drumming of rain on the roof and occasional rumbles of thunder. "Your report mentioned this area as potential expanded habitat for the pine martens," Alex said finally, breaking the tension. "What made you identify it?" "Work, safe territory." Mia latched onto the topic gratefully, explaining the ideal conditions she'd observed: the right tree density, prey population, and minimal human interference. Alex listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that revealed his genuine interest. As night deepened, the conversation drifted from professional to personal. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing between them, powerful, unpredictable, impossible to ignore. "You never married?" Alex asked, refilling their cups with the cabin's supply of instant coffee. Mia traced the rim of her mug. "Almost, 8 years ago. Environmental lawyer who swept into town for a big case against a mining company. We were together for 2 years before I realized I was just another project to him, the rustic forest ranger who needed saving from her small-town life." "His loss," Alex said quietly. "What about you? No Mrs. Conservation Director waiting in some city apartment?" Something shadowed his expression. "There was someone. Elise. We worked together at the Colorado Conservation Commission." He paused. "She died 3 years ago. Hiking accident in terrain she knew well. Just bad luck. Wrong place. Wrong time." "I'm sorry," Mia whispered, understanding now the grief she sometimes glimpsed behind his composed exterior. "After that, I threw myself into administration work. Offices, meetings, paperwork, as far from the field as possible." His eyes met hers across the small table. "Until Pinewood." The air between them changed, charged with unspoken words. Mia stood abruptly, moving to check the fire, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze. "We should try to sleep," she said. "You take the bed. I'll use the chair. Don't be ridiculous. We're both adults. The bed's big enough to share without complications." Complications. Such a clinical word for the electricity that sparked whenever they were near each other. The storm intensified, rain becoming hail that pelted the cabin like thrown pebbles. When a particularly violent thunderclap shook the walls, Mia jumped, dropping the log she'd been adding to the fire. Alex was beside her instantly, steadying her with a hand on her waist. "You okay?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He was close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the faint pine scent that clung to his skin. His hand remained at her waist, neither pulling her closer nor letting go. "Mia," he said, her name a question and a warning rolled into one. "This is a bad idea," she whispered, even as she leaned imperceptibly closer. "Terrible," he agreed, his free hand coming up to brush a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "You're my boss." "Yes, we barely know each other." His eyes, those forest amber eyes, held hers. "Don't we?" And then they were kissing, desperately, as if the storm had broken something loose inside them both. His hands tangled in her hair as hers gripped his shoulders, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness and carefully maintained distance crumbling between them. They moved toward the bed, shedding remaining layers, exploring each other with increasingly urgent touches. In the flickering firelight, Mia traced the scar on his arm, learning the map of his body as intimately as she knew her beloved forest paths. "Are you sure?" Alex whispered against her neck. In answer, she pulled him closer, her body arching to meet his. Outside, the storm raged on, but within the cabin's walls, they created their own sanctuary of whispered confessions and shared warmth. Later, as they lay tangled in the cabin's rough blankets, Mia rested her head on Alex's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, and moonlight occasionally broke through the clouds, casting silver patterns across the floor. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked, voicing the question that hung between them. Alex's fingers traced lazy patterns along her spine. "Tomorrow we go back to being Director Winters and Ranger Reynolds." Mia propped herself up on an elbow to look at him. "And this?" "This is ours," he said simply. "Something separate from titles and protocols. If you want it to be." She considered his words, the implications of what he was offering. Not promises of forever, but possibility. A path to explore, with all its uncertainties. "I want," she admitted, bending to kiss him once more as the storm finally broke, stars emerging in the clearing sky. Tangled roots. 3 weeks after the storm, Mia stood at her favorite overlook, watching the forest transition into autumn's full glory. Below, a tapestry of red, gold, and russet spread across the valley, punctuated by the steadfast green of pines. The beauty nearly masked the growing tension in Pinewood. "Thought I might find you here," came a familiar voice. Mia didn't turn as Alex joined her at the edge. "Director Winters," she acknowledged, all too aware of the junior rangers hiking nearby. They'd been careful since that night in the cabin. Professional in public, stealing moments of privacy when they could, brief touches in empty hallways, hushed conversations under starlight, rare nights in her cabin when the forest seemed to keep their secrets. It was exhilarating and exhausting, this careful dance between what they were and what they appeared to be. "The board approved our counterproposal," Alex said. "Ridgeline's development has been officially restricted to the southern parcel." "That's unexpected." Jennings seemed determined to get the watershed property. "Let's just say I had some leverage." A small smile played at his lips. "Sometimes having connections in high places is useful." Mia finally turned to look at him. In the crisp autumn light, she could see faint shadows beneath his eyes, evidence of the long hours he'd been working. "You're making enemies," she said quietly. "I didn't come here to win popularity contests." "No." "But," she hesitated. "There are rumors, Alex, about why you were really sent here." His expression sharpened. "What rumors?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text from the station. Her breath caught as she read it. "Everything okay?" Alex asked, noticing her sudden tension. "I need to get back. It's nothing important." She forced a smile. "Just some paperwork I forgot. It wasn't paperwork. It was a ghost from the past." Jackson Reeves leaned against her desk, looking as carelessly handsome as he had 8 years ago when he'd asked her to marry him, and as he had 7 years ago when he'd left her behind. "Hello?" "Mia," he said, straightening as she entered. "You look good." "The forest agrees with you." "What are you doing here, Jackson?" He glanced around the station, taking in the maps, equipment, and modest furnishings with a familiar, condescending smile. "Still the same charming little operation, I see." "It's efficient," she countered. "Now answer my question." Professional courtesy. He handed her a business card. "Environmental Defense Coalition," with his name under the title of Executive Director. "We're investigating some concerning activities around Pinewood. I thought you'd want to know." "What kind of activities?" "The kind that might explain why the Department of Conservation suddenly sent their rising star to this backwater." Jackson moved closer. "Your new boss isn't what he seems, Mia. Alexander Winters has a complicated history with development interests." A cold feeling settled in her stomach. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I've done my research. 3 months before coming here, he had private meetings with Silver Peak Industries, the parent company of Ridgeline Development." Jackson's eyes gleamed with the same intensity that had once captivated her. "Now he's quietly clearing the way for development projects all over Pinewood." "He's restricted development," Mia argued. "He's protected more acreage than—" "Window dressing," Jackson interrupted. A clever misdirection while the real deals happen behind closed doors. Trust me, I've seen this playbook before. Trust you? Mia laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from the man who promised me forever, then decided small-town life was too limiting for his grand ambitions. Something like regret flickered across his features. I deserved that. But this isn't about us, Mia. It's about protecting what you love. I know how much these forests mean to you. Before she could respond, the door opened, and Alex walked in. He stopped abruptly, eyes moving from Mia to Jackson with a questioning look. Director Winters? Mia said formally. This is Jackson Reeves from the Environmental Defense Coalition. Apparently, he has concerns about development in Pinewood. Recognition dawned in Alex's eyes. Reeves, I've heard of your organization's work, and I've heard of yours, Jackson replied coolly, extending his hand. Though I admit I'm curious why someone of your caliber would request a transfer to such a remote posting. Some of us prefer trees to traffic, Alex said evenly, shaking Jackson's hand with measured politeness. What brings the EDC to Pinewood? Routine monitoring. We go where environmental threats emerge. Jackson smiled thinly. And my history with the area gives me a personal interest. The tension in the room thickened. Mia watched as the two men sized each other up, Jackson radiating metropolitan confidence in his tailored suit, Alex steady and unreadable in his ranger uniform. Well, any friend of Ranger Reynolds is welcome in Pinewood, Alex said finally. If you have specific concerns, my office is always open. I'll remember that, Jackson replied. Turning to Mia, his expression softened. Dinner tonight? For old time's sake. There's more we should discuss. Mia felt Alex stiffen beside her. I'm busy tonight, she said. Tomorrow, then. This is important, Mia. Jackson's voice lowered. More important than you know? After he left, silence stretched between them. Alex moved to the window, watching Jackson cross the street to his rental car. Ex-boyfriend? He asked with forced casualness. Ex-fiancé? Mia admitted. It's been 7 years, Alex nodded slowly. And what exactly does he think is so important to discuss with you? The suspicion in his tone made her defensive. Apparently, your mysterious meetings with Silver Peak Industries before you came to Pinewood. His face went carefully blank, the same expression he wore in difficult negotiations. I see. Did you have those meetings? Yes. The single word hit her like a physical blow. Were you going to tell me? It wasn't relevant? Wasn't relevant? Mia's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. You've been making decisions about land that I've protected for years, all while having secret connections to the very developers threatening it. It's more complicated than that, Mia. Then explain it to me. Alex ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in the gesture. There are larger considerations at play. Conservation strategies that extend beyond— Don't, she interrupted. Don't give me bureaucratic doublespeak. Not after everything. Not after whispered promises in the dark she didn't add. His expression hardened. Fine. Have dinner with Reeves. Get his version of events. Maybe you'll trust his word over mine. He clearly still has influence with you. That's unfair. Is it? Alex stepped closer, lowering his voice. You were ready to believe the worst about me from the moment we met, Mia. Maybe you still are. Before she could respond, his radio crackled. An urgent call from the Western Boundary Patrol. Without another word, Alex left, the door closing firmly behind him. That night, alone in her cabin, Mia sorted through conflicting emotions. Jackson's warnings circled in her mind, alongside memories of Alex's passion for conservation, his gentle hands on her skin, the shadows that sometimes crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. Her phone lit up with a text from Jackson. Still on for dinner tomorrow? The truth matters, Mia. She stared at it for a long time before responding, 7 p.m., the Spruce Cafe. When she finally slept, her dreams were a confused tangle of past and present. Jackson walking away down a forest path that somehow led to Alex standing beside a bulldozer, watching impassively as ancient pines fell around him. The next evening, dressed in her one decent non-uniform outfit, Mia entered the Spruce Cafe to find Jackson already waiting. For 2 hours, he laid out his case, documents showing connections between Silver Peak and various conservation departments where Alex had worked. Patterns of land rezoning that initially restricted development, but eventually opened more valuable parcels. Testimonials from other small towns that had experienced similar conservation efforts. It's subtle, Jackson explained. That's why it works. He's not corrupt in the obvious sense. He genuinely cares about conservation. He just believes in a very specific vision of it, one that ultimately serves corporate interests while appearing to protect the environment. And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart? Mia challenged. Not because your organization wants a high-profile case. Jackson's expression softened. I'm telling you because despite everything, I care about you, Mia. I always have. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Through the cafe window behind him, Mia caught a glimpse of a familiar figure passing on the sidewalk. Alex stopped, his eyes meeting hers through the glass. For one frozen moment, he took in the scene, her hand beneath Jackson's, their heads close together over scattered documents. Then his expression closed, and he walked away into the gathering darkness. New growth. The first snow of the season dusted pinewood like powdered sugar, transforming the forest into a crystalline wonderland. Mia crunched along the main trail, clipboard in hand, mechanically noting conditions for the weekly report. 2 weeks had passed since her dinner with Jackson, 2 weeks of stilted professional interactions with Alex and sleepless nights spent questioning everything. Jackson had extended his stay in Pinewood, taking a room at the local inn and becoming a frequent presence around town. His charm quickly won over many locals, especially when he began hosting community meetings about sustainable future planning that painted development as inevitable but manageable with the right oversight. Alex, meanwhile, had withdrawn, focusing intently on work and declining invitations to community events. The easy camaraderie he'd built with the Ranger team faded, replaced by efficient but distant leadership. The situation came to a head at the town council meeting, where Jackson formally presented his concerns about Silver Peak's influence on conservation decisions. Without directly accusing Alex, he masterfully planted seeds of doubt, offering the Environmental Defense Coalition's assistance in ensuring transparent processes. When Alex finally rose to speak, the room fell silent. Mia held her breath, expecting a bureaucratic defense or carefully worded denial. Instead, he placed a thick folder on the podium. These are my personal notes and correspondence regarding Silver Peak Industries dating back 4 years, he began, his voice steady. I'm making them public record tonight. He proceeded to detail how, while working in Colorado, he'd uncovered a pattern of environmental violations by Silver Peak subsidiaries, violations carefully concealed through shell companies and complex corporate structures. I requested the transfer to Pinewood, Alex continued, because internal documents indicated this was their next target for large-scale development, beginning with small, seemingly reasonable projects to establish presence before expanding aggressively. Murmurs spread through the crowd as he explained how his restrictive policies had been strategically designed to block Silver Peak's long-term plans, not facilitate them. The meetings Mr. Reeves referenced were part of an ongoing investigation. I needed to understand their strategy to effectively counter it. Alex's eyes found Jackson in the crowd. What's curious is how quickly the EDC appeared after I blocked Ridgeline's watershed development, a project that would have created the foothold Silver Peak needed. Jackson stood. Are you suggesting our organization is somehow compromised? I'm suggesting, Alex replied coolly, that the EDC has received significant donations from Meridian Foundation over the past 2 years, a charitable organization primarily funded by Silver Peak's CEO. Perhaps an oversight in your research. Mr. Reeves? As the meeting erupted into heated discussion, Mia slipped outside, needing air. Snow continued to fall, gently muffling the town's sounds. She'd walked 2 blocks before she heard footsteps behind her. Mia, wait! Alex stood in the falling snow, his breath visible in the cold air. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked uncertain. Why didn't you tell me? She asked quietly. About the investigation, about your real reasons for coming to Pinewood. Why keep me in the dark? Compartmentalization, he said, then grimaced at how formal it sounded. It's what I was trained to do. The fewer people who knew the full picture, the less likely information would leak back to Silver Peak. I'm not just people, Alex. At least I thought I wasn't. He stepped closer. You aren't. That's what made it complicated. I couldn't risk your career by involving you in something potentially explosive. And then it became personal, and I didn't know how to unravel the half-truths without making you think everything between us was built on deception. Wasn't it? The question that had haunted her for weeks. No. The word emerged with such conviction that Mia almost believed him. What happened between us had nothing to do with Silver Peak or conservation politics. That night in the cabin, every moment since, that was just us. Just Alex and Mia. Behind them, the town hall doors opened, releasing a flood of voices into the snowy evening. Jackson emerged, scanning the street until he spotted them. Interesting performance, Winters, he called, approaching with measured steps. Though you left out how convenient it was to get close to Mia, the one person who knows these forests better than anyone, whose cooperation you needed to block development effectively. That's enough, Jackson, Mia warned. Is it? His expression hardened. Did he tell you he turned down the regional director position to come here? That he specifically requested Pinewood when there were a dozen higher-profile assignments available. He sought you out, Mia. Alex's jaw tightened. My interest in Pinewood was professional. Meeting Mia was unexpected. Convenient, though, Jackson pressed. The devoted local ranger with unparalleled knowledge and influence who conveniently fell for... I said enough! Mia's voice cut through the night. This isn't about me, Jackson. It's about you trying to discredit Alex because he exposed your organization's conflicts of interest. Jackson's expression flickered with genuine hurt. I came here to protect you. No, Mia realized suddenly. You came here to use me just like before. My connection to this place, my reputation, my knowledge, they're assets to you, not reasons to care about me. That's not true. I never stopped caring about you. But you never started respecting me, she replied softly. You always saw my dedication to Pinewood as quaint, something I'd eventually outgrow when the right person showed me a bigger world. Snow gathered on Jackson's expensive coat as he considered her words. And he respects you? This man who kept you in the dark about his real agenda? He sees me, Mia said simply. He understands that my world isn't small because of where I choose to live, but vast because of what I choose to protect. Jackson studied her face, then nodded slowly, resignation settling over his features. For what it's worth, I think he actually does care about these forests. And about you. He glanced at Alex. Don't make my mistake. After Jackson walked away, silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft patter of snow. I should have trusted you, Alex said finally. With all of it, I'm sorry I didn't. And I should have trusted that what I felt wasn't wrong, Mia replied. That what we shared in that cabin wasn't just circumstance or convenience. It wasn't, he assured her, stepping closer. It was the most real thing I've felt since Elise died. Maybe ever. Snowflakes caught in her eyelashes as she looked up at him. So where does that leave us? When your investigation concludes, when Silver Peak retreats, will Pinewood still be enough? Alex reached for her hands, his touch warm despite the cold night. Pinewood was enough before I met you. With you, he smiled softly. With you, it's everything I never knew I was looking for. That sounds suspiciously like forever talk, Director Winters, Mia said, a smile tugging at her lips. Maybe it is, he replied, pulling her closer. Some roots go deep, Ranger Reynolds. Some connections can't be broken. As their lips met in the falling snow, Mia felt something long wounded inside her finally heal, a recognition that loving this place, these forests hadn't made her world smaller, but had prepared her to recognize when someone, belonged in it completely. 3 months later, as spring brought new growth to Pinewood, Mia and Alex stood together at her favorite overlook. Below them, the forest stretched awake after winter's slumber, early wildflowers dotting the understory with splashes of color. The development threat had receded with Silver Peak's retreat following a federal investigation prompted by Alex's evidence. I have something for you, Alex said, reaching into his pocket and extracting a small wooden box. Inside lay not a ring, but a key. What's this? Mia asked, taking it curiously. The deed transfer was finalized yesterday, he explained. The old Miller property at the forest edge, it's ours now. Room enough for a home that bridges town and wilderness. Mia's eyes widened. You bought land here? We bought land, he corrected gently. If you want it, a place to build something permanent, something ours. Instead of answering immediately, Mia took his hand and led him down a narrow side trail to a small clearing she'd never shown anyone. There, amid a patch of early spring sunlight, stood a sapling pine, no more than 2 years old, but growing with determined vitality. After the fire last summer, she explained, I found this seedling struggling in the burned section. I transplanted it here, where it could thrive. She knelt beside the young tree, gently touching its needles. Some things need the right conditions to grow. The right place, the right time, the right care. Alex knelt beside her, understanding in his eyes. And you think we've found ours? Mia leaned against him, watching sunlight filter through the branches above them, casting dappled patterns across the forest floor, beautiful in their imperfection, strong in their interconnection. I think, she said softly, that some roots find exactly where they're meant to be. As spring unfurled around them, 2 paths that had once seemed separate twisted together like vines seeking the same light, not by chance or convenience, but by choice, by recognition, by growth toward something stronger than either could become alone.